It finally happened. Breaking news that's shaking the NFL with major implications for the Los Angeles Chargers. The news we all expected and feared has finally come to pass. Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift are engaged. Yeah, so here's what I think happened. T-Swizzle and Trav got a little jealous of Justin Herbert and Madison Beer's blossoming romance and decided to lock in like 2017 Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, sorry Falcons fans, and crashed Herb Your Nation's party with this $550,000 news. But don't fear, Chargers fans. We'll make sure that our beloved new power couple will continue to receive our love and our support during this devastating news. Oh yeah, and NFL roster cuts happened today too. What's up everyone, I'm Sam Pena, a Bolt fan in the Berg for Chargers Digest, where we talk about all things Lightning. Today we're talking about the 53-man roster cuts, where I was right yesterday in my predictions, and where I was wrong. So, let's talk about it. Let's start off with where I was wrong, and boy am I glad to have been wrong about Marlowe Wax making the 53-man roster. For those of you who don't know, Marlowe Wax has, I think, one of the best stories coming into the draft in 2025. When he was just 7 years old, his father passed away from a heart attack, leaving his mother Dara to raise Marlowe alone. But that didn't stop Marlowe from having success in college. In 4 seasons with Syracuse, he had 294 tackles, 16.5 sacks, 8 forced fumbles, and a pick. At just 230 pounds, he was one of the best players in college football. But then he suffered a devastating knee injury in the first game of the 2024 season, which caused him to miss 6 weeks. But he came back and still performed at a high level, being one of the top-graded linebackers according to Pro Football Focus. But because he was so undersized, he went undrafted, and the Chargers are the ones who have reaped the benefits. It makes a lot of sense why the Chargers want to keep Marlowe on the roster as well, given the injuries they've recently experienced at the linebacker position. I'm talking about Junior Colson, who is likely going to be starting the year on the PUP list. Colson also just hasn't really developed as the Chargers wish he would have at this point. So Marlowe provides some decent depth for them, but he also was a good option for the team if someone like Deion Henley were to suffer an injury as well. When you look at Marlowe's RAS score, like I said, he's undersized, but he's an incredible athlete, posting very similar numbers to Deion actually when it comes to his 40-yard dash and his burst as well. I don't think, obviously, Marlowe is as good as Deion. I think Deion is borderline an all-pro linebacker. But I do think that you can bring in someone like Marlowe Wax to fill in if Deion does get hurt, and you're going to be able to see him do a lot of similar things to what Deion can do. So, excited to see Marlowe making the roster and hopeful for his future. Just as I was happy to have been wrong when Marlowe Wax made the roster, I'm very sad that I was right about Tony Jefferson not being one of the safeties with the Chargers. Listen, Tony is a veteran. He had an amazing career with the Ravens, briefly retired, came back for the Chargers last year and was outstanding in limited action. And then in the preseason, he was one of the best players for the Bolts, posting a 93.5 PFF grade, one of the top grades amongst the teams, and he's beloved in the locker room. But just like I said yesterday, Joe Hortiz will always go with the young talent. And for those of you wondering, no, Tony Jefferson is not eligible for waivers, which means that his time with the Chargers has come to an end. And Chargers fans, it's time for us to let go of the dream. But now let's move on to something that I was wrong about. And I was a little bit wrong and also a little bit right when it comes to this. It's the running back room. But let's start with the wrong, and his name is Raheem Sanders. I really thought Raheem Sanders had earned a place on the Chargers roster. He had 98 rushing yards on 27 carries, 3 catches for 28 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. He was one of the stars, I thought, in the preseason for the Bolts. But I guess the Chargers really were looking for something different in the running back room. Obviously, Najee Harris was taken off the NFI list, which means the Chargers needed to add space for him. Then they had first-round running back Omarion Hampton, who of course they were not going to cut. But moving on to another thing that I also was a little bit right and a little bit wrong about as well, starting with the wrong, and that was with the offensive line. I had Branson Taylor making the 53-man roster. The Chargers spent a 6th-round pick on him. I thought they would want to keep him and continue to develop him. But as Jim Harbaugh always says, competitors welcome, and frankly, Taylor didn't compete enough. He struggled mightily in preseason, having one of the worst Pro Football Focus grades, and in response, the Chargers made a trade for Texans tackle Austin Deculus. Now, there's not much that's known at this point about Deculus. We do know that he was with the Texans for several years. He was a 6th-round pick back in 2022. And since then, he's kind of bounced around to different practice squads. But he has had some bright moments. Now, if you look at his Pro Football Focus grade, there is not really much to see there, and that's because he only played 68 snaps. But in that limited action, he did play well as a pass blocker, grading at 76.1. On the flip side, though, we have seen him perform, though, in the preseason this year. Now, granted, it's only been limited snaps, but he had 497 of those snaps in the preseason and only gave up 6 pressures, 1 sack, and 2 hits in that time. Now, again, that is against mostly the backups for the Chargers, but it is exciting to see him have some success and be able to hopefully translate that into the regular season. The important thing to remember here is we're not looking for starters. At this point, the Chargers' offensive line is set, and if you think you're going to find a stellar starting offensive lineman out in the free agent market at this point of the year, I got news for you. It's not going to happen. Those guys don't grow on trees. If the NFL finds them, the NFL teams keep them. They don't just let them float around out there. What the Chargers are looking for at this point is depth. Somebody who can come in and play at an average level if there is an injury to our starting 5. And I think Deculus can be that for the team. I know that there is some hope here as well because the Chargers may have gotten a little bit of a steal here given what Joe Hortiz did last year trading for Elijah Molden. He was somebody who the Titans had counted out, and yet Molden ended up being a very impactful player for the Chargers through the season and earned a massive contract extension in the offseason. Now, is that going to happen with Deculus? Who knows? But at the very least, the Chargers are only giving up a conditional 7th-round pick for him, and I think there's reason to be hopeful with this move. Now, there's a lot of moves that are still yet to be made for the Chargers. I still think Hortiz is going to be doing some tinkering, but so far, I think for the most part, he's made the correct decisions. We'll see what happens coming into 2025. Thanks you guys all again for watching. I'm Sam Pena here at Chargers Digest. Please remember to like and subscribe. We're trying to build the channel from the ground up here. Until next time, Bolt Nation, bolt up.